Hello, everyone. We are united by rice. I'm Junko Goda, actress and Japanese English interpreter, and I'm here with my co-host Ben Lee. Hey, Ben.
Yeah. Hi there. Good to see you. This is actually a rare time where I get to say good to see you, and yet I actually did get to see you in person a couple days ago, which is nice. As any of you who are loyal listeners would know, we had a run up to Belly Laughs
Oh
with
my God,
quite
yeah.
a few of the
We had Michelle
comedians.
Sugihara from Cape. We had Asif Ali. We had Kieran Doyle and D'Lo. I
Yeah.
named all them.
Yeah.
Yay! But yeah, we were
And
turning
poor,
them out really fast.
and I will say, poor Kieran. I think she opened not just the day, but really the festival for the most part. I mean, there
Yeah.
there was like an MC, but she was the first comedian, and people were still gathering. I don't even think people knew that the stage she was coming on was a stage for comedy. It was really hot, so I'm sure,
She was wearing a
you know,
black jumpsuit.
yeah, not most comedians are used to nighttime lounge type of atmosphere, so she pulled it off, but I'm sure it was
Yeah.
quite an experience on her
Yeah.
birthday nonetheless.
Yes, a lot of those comedians coming out of their caves, their ice
Yes.
house caves, and squinting at the sun. But I thought it was pretty. I liked the setup. So just to give folks an idea, there were three stages, two stages that were outside amongst the food, so you can kind of they weren't acoustically overlapping each other, which I thought was smart, thankfully. Some people don't think about that. So you can freely just float between the two stages, and even and both stages there was some food around it. So even if you weren't at the stage to listen, you were forced to listen to it anyway because you're waiting for your food. And then the festival also took over the Peacock Theater. Very nice theater, and all the I guess technically bigger headliners. It didn't really seem like, yeah, I couldn't tell, they were, I mean, yeah, Margaret Cho, I mean, she the queen, so she obviously
Yeah.
in the Peacock
Well, you're
Theater.
also a self-admitted not lover necessarily of stand-up comedy, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
I think you're not wrong. I mean, there were some, in my mind, pretty big names like Kieran, like Helen Hong, who performed
Oh
very
yeah,
early on their
yeah,
days.
on day two, yeah.
Yeah, but then some folks that were reserved for like the after 6 p.m. start in the theater.
Yeah.
Um, so I think probably that was also deliberate, right? You want the people that are outside and eating to also like hear some good comedy, and
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't think they wanted to just do it in perfect sequence of we're going to go from the least known
Yeah,
comedians to the
exactly.
most known, right?
Yeah. So I
That
thought that was
said,
kind of well thought. I don't know what the
yeah,
curation was, but I think it was well thought out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And people can go to unitedbyrice.com and read the article that we put up. I enjoyed the comedy I saw. I mean, from top to bottom or bottom to top, there was no one I saw that I wouldn't go pay to watch their whole show,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there
yeah.
were 30 comedians. I certainly didn't see all of them. And there were many that I had never seen before that I am now like a giant fan of. Like I'd never seen Zarna Garg
Mm.
before, and she
Now you're
just
a big fan.
I mean, she embodies a type of comedian that we don't have, right? Which is like a motherly Indian woman, right? That's just not a
Mm.
comedian
Yeah.
that you see, and then she is just outrageous.
Yeah, I think for me, like who I was exposed to for the first time was Robin Tran. I
Mm,
believe their last name is Tran, but yeah, like, yeah, or maybe it was curated with a lot of a trans cluster. I don't know. Maybe that was a pattern there that I'm just realizing now at the stage that I was at, because it was D'Lo who then introduced Robin
yeah,
Tran, who is yeah, trans female. So that was interesting, but had never heard about Robin. So that
yeah.
was yeah, that was really
We could talk about this topic and the
yes.
show forever, but we want to talk about today's guest,
Yes.
Kaila Yu, who is a new author. Actually, she's a content creator mostly, but actually came up in the biz as I don't even
Import
think
model,
there
yeah.
are there still import models. Is that still a thing?
Yes, but the style is definitely the style and the culture is, I mean, it's, we were talking about how Kyla was a pinup model in the 2000s, in the early 2000s. So, I mean, it's been 25 years since then. I feel like it's
Yeah.
definitely changed. And also, like a big thing is like the whole Hatsune Miku virtual idols and how that is become a new like preference
Okay, I don't know.
into the car culture. Oh yeah, I'm just
Oh, car
talking
culture.
Greek
Yeah,
too.
I don't know what you're saying exactly. Okay, so let's get
So
into that. But
yeah.
Kaila, import model,
No, it's because
spent a little time as a
yeah,
musician, then
being
wrote a
around Little
book called
Tokyo.
Fetishized.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, being around Little Tokyo, there's a car. There's a car culture that's always they're always having some sort of gatherings around LA or Little Tokyo, and it's also a large part of like, for example, like the Nisei Week parade and Nisei Week festivities. They usually program in a car thing, and I believe the Japanese American National Museum is coming out with a book about J-town cruising, about specifically the Japanese car culture in the U.S. So anyway, yes, the car culture compared to 25 years ago because of anime, that's compared to 25 years ago, you would have never really seen car wraps with a lot of anime, and now it's just so like part of the culture now. That's all I see all the time. It's like
I
anime
see.
wraps all over the place. Yeah.
Well, Kaila, so because like I remember I was never into it. I'm just generally not a big car person, but I
Mm-hmm.
had friends that would go to these car shows, and I guess that's where you would see these import models. But I was trying to, because
Not even shows. It's just like I remember over at
magazines or
or just gatherings like UCLA. I guess I was there on a Thursday night, and there was like these car dude people, culture people who gathered in like one of the parking lots, and they were about to move somewhere, but
hmm.
they're very loud, you know. So they just kind of pop up everywhere. But again, it's very it's
So
a
then
commonplace thing in LA.
where would the models come into play? Like if it's just like a spontaneous gathering, because I see that. I
Hmm.
see people who
Hmm.
like, oh, we're gonna have our Mustang meetup, but where do the models come into play? Because I'm trying to again, I'm
That's
trying
true.
to
I guess if it's a
remember.
show, I mean, I think you have to be probably like quote unquote well known or like upper ranked within that world.
Hmm.
That would require um any like car girls. And I'm also just thinking back on Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Sure. Yeah.
um those days as well. So I think yeah, if it's like a high caliber person, you would probably have a model, and then obviously paid like events. You're getting paid
Okay.
to be there.
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the obviously the big changes from back in her day to the Hatsunomiko. Did I say that right?
Hatsune Miku.
I didn't even come close.
Yeah. No,
Um,
you were kind of there.
but
30%.
like it's virtual, right? The
Mm-hmm.
because back then I remember, and so how I discovered Kyla was literally like in my Instagram feed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she was making these funny posts about these older, I shouldn't call them older, but Asian models that I vaguely remembered from the 2000s, like early
Mm-hmm.
2000s. I'm like Sung Hee Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, in my mind, how do I even know that name? Where did we see these people? Because there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
social media back then, right? The
Right.
internet was barely a
Like you had
thing.
MTV.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think to your point, maybe the import model business the way it was back then probably doesn't exist because now you have social media. Now there if I need to see pretty Asian women, that's not a hard thing to do anymore. But back then it was actually kind of a hard thing
Mm-hmm.
to find in any
Yeah.
real normal media,
Come
right?
to think of it, it would be a car show.
Yeah, there you go.
Or
Okay.
because you didn't have Comic Cons that much back
Yeah.
then. That
Or
would be your second.
cosplay, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't even
or
a
that, yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So I think actually pinup models more that would have been interesting to ask Kyla, but I wonder if they're more actually the models are more cosplaying now. I'm wondering.
Mm,
Rather
yeah,
than what they were doing, 25 years
sure.
ago, more of that
Sure.
influence now, I wonder.
Well, and much of our conversation, right, is kind of what today's content creator
Mhm.
even, how you compare this generation to what she was doing back
Yeah,
in
yeah.
her
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Oh, and full disclosure, so Ben was the one who's had read most of the book. I was the one who hadn't really read most of the book, just for context. Um, but I was still. I mean, it's a lived experience.
Yeah.
Asian fetishes for as a female Asian female is a lived experience. So
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of things that I could plug into, but it was really interesting learning that her book is a little bit more academic in a way with a lot of and I think what interests me is the origins. I mean, I understand large part of it is just patterns of colonization. But it would be interesting because I know, she did a lot of research and stuff, but as far as like contemporary Asian fetish and
Yeah.
yeah, what's going on with that
Well,
now?
and that's why I wanted to talk to her. I think that's why it was a fun conversation, and you didn't have to read the book to enter into the conversation, right? Because we all know what Asian fetish generally means or how we talk about it. It's we've all accused people, known people of
Yeah.
having the Asian
Yeah.
fetish,
Or
right?
do we know how to define it? It was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, because then you get into the nuances. Well, is it a fetish to just have a preference, right? And I think she again goes into great lengths of not only explaining it in our interview, but in her book she spends a lot more time on it, and then spends a little time in the other direction, right, in terms of for men, how were men portrayed, and how has that impacted um how we have navigated relationships with Asian women or white women, right? So
Mhm.
again, I found it a very quick. It's about, for those, the book comes out later in August, August 19th, which by the time you listen to this episode will probably be days away. And it's a pretty quick read. It's 220 so pages.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
And it's really essays. As we mentioned in the podcast, there's an essay describing what an ABG is. There's an essay on memoirs of a geisha. There's an essay about her dad. There's
Mm.
just different little stories, so you don't have to read it all at once. You can kind of read it in chunks, and I highly recommend it. Do you, in your life, uh, what emotions does the word Asian fetish bring out in you? And you've spent some time
Oh,
obviously auditioning for
I mean,
roles,
feelings would be,
starring in shows,
uh,
right? Like, you, I, one of the things that I think translates to actors, and as you're thinking about parts, is, are you going to take a role that feels like this is, very much fetishizing Asian women because it's a job, or do you have the ability to kind of turn those away or influence those, right? Like,
yeah, it's really case by case. I think it's circumstances are different now. If it is portrayed with an Asian fetish lens, then it's there for a reason, I think, in this day and age. Yeah, and outside of that, it's like maybe there's an opportunity to update the role. It really like depends. I think that's a continuing again, I mentioned this during our interview, but this is something that comes in Yankee Dog You Die, currently at ESOS Players, written by Philip Kangotanda. And it's and I just saw it yesterday. So
hmm,
what's interesting in the play is that yeah, you're just faced with different scenarios, and hopefully you can have a meaningful conversation with the writer, producer, or showrunners. Um, and if you can, and if it's a role that's kind of stuck back in the 2000s, I think it's hard. I'd like to think it's
yeah,
hard to find a Asian role written like it is in the 2000s without an actual reason. Like it's a flashback and
okay.
for
Well,
example.
you're being optimistic, I think.
I think just people do understand people as in showrunners, writers. I feel like they have an understanding of consequences. And just as casting feels the pressure of like, like you're not gonna cast someone who's Thai for pachinko. Like you're just not gonna do
Yeah.
no matter how perfect their Korean is, you're not gonna cast someone who's Thai in pachinko, for example. Like we will never see Memoirs of a Geisha cast like that ever again.
All right. Well, Kyla Yu, she again book coming out August 19th. It's called Fetishized. I'm sure it's going to be in all formats. And pay attention to her social media because she's got some pretty cool events with some pretty well-known Asian moderators or co-hosts coming up in the LA area.
Yes.
All right, here is Kaila. Hi, welcome back to United by Rice. I'm Ben, and I'm with my co-host Junko, and our guest for this episode is Kaila Yu. Kaila, nice to talk to you.
Hi. Nice to join
And
you guys. Thanks for having me.
sure, and I was about to introduce you as author Kaila Yu, but I'm not sure you're used to that moniker yet.
It is a new moniker, yeah. Very unexpected change from the various random things I've done in my life.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that for sure. One of the reasons Junko and I wanted to have you on, first of all, Junko is an actress and is in the entertainment world at large. I largely write and talk to TV and filmmakers as well as actors, all kinds of talent. And one of the things we are always talking about is not just the opportunities for Asians in TV and film, but of course how they're represented, right? And so when I think frankly kind of dropped, I don't mean like you dropped into my DMs, but dropped into my Instagram feed.
Slid into your DMs.
Yeah, maybe I wish that would happen from time to time, but when you showed up in my feed initially, I was like, oh, her content is so fun just as a content creator, right? Because you and I must be pretty close in age, and all the people you talk about, it's like, oh my God, I remember Sung Hee Lee and all these people. And then I saw that you were writing a book, and the book is titled Fetishized. And I was like, oh, this is a topic that we haven't explored on this show yet, and I'm so excited to tackle it. So, Kaila, before we even get into the book, tell us a little bit more about you. You just mentioned, author's new, but you've had obviously a very interesting background.
Yeah, I've had a really random background. I always say, like, what is that thing where they say jack of all trades, master of none? I just kind of like ping ponged in a bunch of places. But I started off as an import model, which was like a scene that was big for Asian Americans back in the 2000s. And then I did a bit of a music stint in a career. And then after that, I became a content creator and then started writing as a journalist and then ended up being an author somehow.
Yeah. Well, and to your credit in reading the book, like, and a talented writer, I really appreciate the amount of research, the amount of references. Like, this isn't just taking content that you might throw on Instagram and putting it in a book. For anyone listening, when you go out and read this book, you learn a lot. It feels very textbooky to me. So a lot of credit to you. So
I feel like some people who buy the book are not going to expect how much history there is in there.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Why did you decide to write this book at this time?
It was totally an accident. Like, I kind of just like say yes to things. But I had started as a travel journalist after my music career and was working doing that. And then the pandemic hit and all of that was canceled and nobody was buying articles about travel. So I kind of started writing about TikTok because everybody was buying articles about TikTok in the pandemic and TikTok was taking off. And I had always wanted to learn TikTok, not because I wanted to, but like you are required to, as even like whatever genre you're in as a job, to have social media these days. It only helps. So I had always wanted to learn TikTok, never had the time. And now I had all the time in the world. So then I started just trying everything. Like we called it throwing pizza at a wall. I'd try like sober content, travel content, cooking content. I tried everything. For a year, I posted 5 videos a day of just trying stuff. But when I started posting about that 2000s Asian American content, that's the stuff that started going viral. So then I started really getting into that and revisiting that time in my life. And then about a year in, maybe the spa shootings happened. So I summarize it for other podcasts if I'm speaking to non-Asians, but I think every Asian knows what that was, right?
Yeah.
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 So basically, the news denied that it was racially targeted, and it was very much like fetishy targeted, I would say, on top of racially targeted. And then I started to reflect on like how I might have contributed to this, because everyone thinks the Asian fetish, oh, it's harmless, it's a compliment. But you know, during my research and with these incidences, it does sometimes lead to violence. So that caused a reflection. I wrote this article for Newsweek about my part in playing into the Asian fetish, and that kind of just sparked the idea for the book.
And for those listening, the book, it's not necessarily like a narrative piece or a novel, but it's really a series of many essays. And, you know, again, the topics that you go into to Junko more than I will feel very familiar. But it's good to hear a little bit of your background, because you could start reading this and say, oh boy, Kaila's gone through a lifetime of like self-hate and whatnot, but it really feels
Yeah.
like it's something that really was a self-reflection more recently, which I'm happy to hear. And there's a flip side to like your content creation, which maybe you think you've played this role or participated in the creation of Asian fetish or the furthering of the Asian fetish, but you're not someone who's shy about your beauty, shy about the photos that you took and your modeling photos, because you still bring that up on social. And I think that's great.
Well, it's weird because like I look at those photos and I'm like, some of them are really beautiful, like some of them I really love. But the whole, I think, theme of the book is if I had different representation, I think I might have chose a different path. I don't regret things, you know what I mean? Like they bring you to where you are. And today I'm happy in life. It was a tumultuous path though. But like if Sung Hee Lee was not my idol, because she was the only beautiful Asian girl I saw at that age, I would have chose a different path, certainly. Like if there was like Blackpink to choose from, or like, you know, there's like hundreds of role models these days.
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason I bring up the topic of you still appreciating your own beauty and you know the you know, even the Asian women we see now and how they're depicted is it is maybe not that black and white, right? So, you know, maybe a good part to transition into is just definitions, right? Like maybe everyone thinks they know what an Asian fetish is or what the Asian fetish is. I think the classic definition is, oh, white guy who only dates Asian girls. But in your words, like, how do you define Asian fetish? And for instance, as an Asian guy, could I have an Asian fetish, or am I protected because I'm Asian and I'm allowed to like Asian women, right? I think you get into these nuances in your introduction, and I'd love for people to hear it.
Yeah, that's the biggest question, mostly from white guys, is what is a fetish versus a preference? And I would say I get pretty specific about it. It's like, okay, if you dated 4 or 5 Asian girls in a row, it's not really a good look, but it's like maybe not a fetish. I define a fetish as somebody who treats Asian women as disposable, like sex objects. So, a guy might date 3 Asian women in a row and be really in love with them genuinely. But a good example is that guy in White Lotus. Do you remember there was a viral moment where the guy said, basically, I'm an Asian woman, is what he came to. Like he had went to Thailand to find himself, and he slept with thousands and thousands of Asian
Sam
girls.
Rockwell,
Yeah.
Sam
Yeah.
Rockwell's character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
That long monologue.
that would be an Asian fetish. That would be somebody who treats women as sexual disposable objects that are interchangeable.
Well, it's interesting because I think that portion is true, but then he wanted to become an Asian woman, right? So what does that mean in terms of his level of fetishism?
Well, I think that was his own interpretation of why he wanted to say.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was like a logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Well, and it is a very interesting, because this notion of preference versus a fetish is so interesting, right? Like you know, and I also appreciate that you do this in the book. Asian guys, growing up for me, I always looked at Asian women having a white fetish, right? Because every pretty
Mm.
Asian woman always ended up with a white guy. And and I appreciate that you talk about this in the book, because that was more about in your the way you describe it is that's more about how media has portrayed and demasculated Asian men, and hence why Asian women may steer toward white men.
Yeah, well,
But
the
you
first
don't
point of
describe that as a fetish
it's
either, right?
not a
That's different,
fetish, first
right?
of all, because they love to say white fetish, but like women did not colonize white countries and rape and pillage them. So there's the colonization aspect, first of all. And I think, like, speaking from a woman, I don't sexualize men. Like, I'm not trying to sleep with a bunch of men and like get my numbers up or like go through them, run through guys. Like, I
Mm.
want to find a guy to love. And that's not a fetish, that's not the using disposable aspect of it. Um, what I do say that there is, and I really dislike it when I hear Asian women say, "Oh, I can't date an Asian guy because he's like my brother." Like, have you ever heard a white woman say that? Like,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah.
absolutely
Mm.
no sense. Yeah, like, have you
Mm,
ever heard a
mm, mm, mm.
Mexican or Black woman say that? Because they could say that about dating the same ethnicity.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
what I call internalized racism. Or I don't
Yeah,
call it, I didn't come up
yeah.
with that term. Yeah, but
Right,
that's what
right, right.
is defined as that.
That's actually interesting. I so there. Wait. What city do you live in? I'm in LA.
In Hollywood.
You're in
Yeah.
Hollywood. Okay, okay, okay. And Ben is actually up north. There's a play over at East West Players, and it's called Yankee Dog You Die, and it was first performed in 1988. One of the very first scenes, exactly that. It's a conversation between an older Asian actor and a younger Asian actor, again set in 1988, and this younger actor's like, I just can't. He's totally like word for word. He's like, it feels like if I date an Asian woman, it feels like I'm sleeping with my sister or my mom,
It's just
and
such a
it's one
weird
of the
thing to say. Like, no other
yeah.
Mm.
ethnicity says this.
But also, relatively speaking, in the 80s, we didn't see ourselves that much
Yeah.
either. And that's a representation conversation that, you obviously address.
Because now all of a sudden, like, Asian guys are like super hot with K-pop and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
literally just representation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Okay, so I still want to unpack this further. So preference versus fetish, right? You take an example of, I think it's fair for, at least my opinion is and part of this is I have 3 brothers-in-law. I have 3 sisters. All my brothers-in-laws are
Hmm.
white.
Mm.
So they're all going to come listen to this and say, Ben, you're accusing us of having Asian fetish. Well, let's unpack that for them. So is it okay?
This is going to be a great Thanksgiving dinner.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
This one.
Is it okay, right, to be a white guy? Just like as an Asian guy, I could say I have a preference for Asian women because I just think they are more beautiful. I think you say something in the book where you said, if there were 100 white women and 100 white or Asian women, you use an example of someone who said, well, those 100 Asian women are going to be more attractive, right? And you said that's not actually true. I might actually say, well, because of my
Your
tastes or
preference,
whatever,
yeah.
it might actually be true. It may not be lopsidedly true, but it may be true in my eyes, and that's a preference. And so I want to make sure I'm interpreting this the right way, because if it's not attached to this kind of almost like dominance, or this like I want a submissive wife, that's why I wanted to date Asian women, then am I in the clear? Am I able to say, yeah, it's okay to have a preference for an ethnicity as long as that's just a physical preference? This is why it's such a complicated conversation.
It is. That's a very touchy subject. I don't know if it's like really right to say you prefer one ethnicity. Like, I don't know. It seems like there's like maybe subconscious internalized ideas in there. But
Mm.
I don't want to like judge anyone specifically. Like it's so much a case by case basis. Like you
Yeah.
can't say blanket, oh,
Mhm.
you've dated 3 Asian girls,
Yeah.
you have a fetish,
Yeah. Well, let's take a real world example so I can get off the hook with my family. Let's take Jen Tran, the Bachelorette.
Yeah.
She took some heat, whether she had a lot of control of it or not, for having very few Asians as Bachelor contestants during her season, right? Is that okay? Like I think a lot of the
I don't
heat
think
she
she
took,
chooses them, does she? I think don't they just give them to her?
I think my understanding and how it's been portrayed in the media is that you certainly influence the producers and the casting of, hey, here are the type of men in the case of the Bachelorette that I prefer, right? Had she said I only want to date Asian men or only want to date white men, maybe that's a different scenario.
No. I actually read an interview on this. She said it was very hard to find Asian men who wanted to be on the show.
On the show.
And you notice there's very few Asians on Love Island and like all these other dating shows. I don't think Asians like particularly necessarily want to be on these shows that often, sometimes.
I hope that's the case. I still think there's, Asian men are just not getting the opportunities to be depicted in
But
that way.
that goes back to internalized racism, and it's not that they're blatantly, it's just like growing up, the Asian man was the quarterback, the hero, the whatever, everything that was on TV was pushed to that's the,
Yep.
pinnacle of manhood or whatever.
Yep.
So
Right.
I don't know if you can necessarily blame someone for just being influenced by that,
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. At
Yep.
what point, at what point are we grown ass adults that we're making the choices? The clear choices.
Point out something
right?
that may be an unpopular opinion. I date both Asian and white guys, and the white guys are so much more aggressive. And the Asian guys are a little
define
more
aggressive.
not
I guess,
they chase you, and I'm not gonna like if you're not chasing me, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go for the one that's chasing because then you feel desirable,
Right.
And
And
white
I don't
guys
think
are more aggressive.
Sure. And I don't know that that's controversial. It's interesting because, as I was going through your book, I had my own self reflections on things. And there have been times in my life, I'll admit this, right, that as an Asian guy, I've even said, like, I can understand why Asian women prefer white guys because your average Asian guy isn't like doesn't present themselves with the confidence that a white guy does. And if any woman likes that, that tends to be a attribute that any woman would like, right? Then I could see that, right? So, and maybe that was me trying to like understand it, rationalize it, justify it. But what you're saying, whether you think it's controversial or not, I understand it, right? I can see exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think what you're pointing out is also conditional too, because if it's a white majority, they're competing against, and if they have blinders on and they don't see any other ethnicity, they feel like they're just competing against other white people, then they're already conditioned to be aggressive from the beginning. So it could be just a pure number Darwinism thing going on.
I mean, there's like multiple factors, obviously.
Yeah.
This is. I think this was never meant to be a easy conversation.
No. Well, and that's why it's so great that you actually are putting this out there. Kaila, you mentioned something earlier, and we are just a couple days from Blackpink having performed in LA for 2 nights, right? And I would love your perception of K-pop and young Asian women often wearing school-like outfits, performing and creating this phenomenon. Because you actually describe them as role models, which I would agree with, and they're super talented individuals, etc. But do you ever look at that now and say, well, in many ways, they're not doing anything much different than I was doing when I was an import model, the way they're dressing and the way they're portrayed by media?
So I'm a
Hmm.
huge Blackpink fan, especially
Mm.
Lisa.
Mm.
And I'll say like compare Blackpink to what Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera were doing in the 2000s. Very, very
Mm.
tame in comparison. Are they still in the ballpark of like being sexually cute or whatever? Yeah, that's just pop music in general, I would say.
Mm.
Um,
Sex sells.
yeah, I would. It's hard to find a mainstream pop star who's not selling sex unless they're
Mm.
like a singer songwriter. Like
I guess
I
maybe
can't think
Taylor Swift. She's not.
Alanis Morissette or
Oh,
something.
yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
Yeah.
but
Fiona Apple.
yeah, but Taylor Swift. Yeah, Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. She
Not
wears short skirts
That's
and
true.
little things too.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like maybe Celine Dion
but
never
you know
went
what the
too
difference
sexy.
is
She
that
sold it out, but
Taylor Swift is not a dancer. So
yes, yes.
the dancing is inherently sex. Like look at Beyonce. I love
Mhm.
Beyonce, but she's like wearing tiny clothes and dancing
Mhm.
everywhere, you know?
But I love the choice she has made as a mom about how her daughter's dressed. I've
I'm
noticed
not
that
aware.
it's
Yeah.
no, as in like it's very age appropriate
Oh,
compared to
okay.
all the other backup dancers. Like her daughter tends to wear more like baggier clothes, just baggy jeans instead of like the crop top, like booty shorts.
Yes, I
Definitely
like that.
no, yeah, yeah. So I just saw something where someone just had like a quick reel of her outfits during the tour, and they're very like age appropriate.
Say Blackpink. Oh my God, the clothing's like really cute to me and not, I mean,
Mm.
compare it
Yeah.
to Nicki Minaj or something, or what's that song that
Mm.
came out about wet
Oh,
ass
WAP. We'll just
Yeah,
call
yeah,
it
yeah.
WAP. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
there's like really dirty
yeah.
stuff out there, so it's like so tame.
And I
Yeah,
think
but
it's a lens too, because
yeah.
you're starting to bring in female designers who will design your shows. So I think just a change in lenses and also the choreographers,
Yeah.
as well.
But
Okay.
will say
Yeah.
I
So
point out in the book that
Mm.
the South Korea is a very heavily patriarchal
Mm.
culture where it's not fun to be a woman.
Mm.
And the beauty standards, it's the highest incidence of plastic surgery. The women
Mhm.
are under pressure to be beautiful. And the whole K-pop system is really patriarchal too.
Mm.
So in that way, we are promoting that same patriarchal ideal of like a super, super ultra young female.
yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Mm.
No,
But
I
yeah.
think there is some of it that's happening, right? So if you were to then just kind of broaden my question to just like the general media now and what you see on TV and how Asian women are depicted, film, movies, TV, any genre, compared to the time that you were modeling and yourself performing as a musician, is there progress? Or do
My
you
God, it's
think how
unbelievable. It's unimaginable. Like the fact that Korean words are being played on Kiss FM, like that's
Mm.
mind blowing. That's
Yes.
like,
Or iHeartRadio.
yeah,
Yeah.
like in a million years when we
Yes.
were growing up, we wouldn't have thought
My
even an
God.
Asian would be on the radio, much
Yeah.
less singing Korean, you know? Or the fact that a lot of this is Korean based, like the Squid Games and all of that, but like beef is like such a
Mhm.
unique representation of Asians that is not generic in any way.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's just so much more film and TV with Asians in it, like
sure.
countless. And then the books being written, so many books by Asian authors, like fiction books.
Yes. Well, okay, so then I think would you agree with this statement that it is okay for Asian women and men to still be portrayed in a sexual way, in an attractive sexual way, as long as there is more meat on the bone to how they're portrayed too. Like you said, Blackpink, sure, sex sells and pop music in general, people wear sexy outfits, but they're being highlighted and celebrated because of their ability to sing and dance and act and perform and be really smart business people, right? And is that an accurate statement in your mind?
Yeah, I'll use the example as me as a pinup model. That is purely selling sex to men. Now, Blackpink, they have really great songs. So even if they didn't look like that, they have really great songs and they're like gorgeous music videos. They aren't always sexy, you know? Sex is an aspect of it. But the argument gets to be like we live in a patriarchy, right? So like to not cater to the male gaze, how do you do? Because women should be able to be sexy and beautiful and like
Yes.
enjoy all of that, but how do you not cater to the male? Even if you're doing it for
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
the male gaze is the gaze. There
Yeah.
is no female gaze really.
And at least for now, it's also a very strong white gaze.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least in this content, you know,
Yeah.
if we were like, you know, changing our setting over to Europe, it would be a little shift a little bit. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
okay, so now we're coming 360 degrees because now you're getting into one of the topics I want to talk about. I discovered you as a content creator, and it probably happened because I clicked on or viewed one too many Asian women in my Instagram one day, and then the feed, as it does, just becomes like lots of Asian women, and probably half or a third of them are going to be, you know, a way to eventually get me to their OnlyFans account, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
A friend who's a sex worker.
The OnlyFans
yeah.
funnel.
Yeah.
So, but in all seriousness, there are a lot of content creators who have huge audiences, and for the most part, it's what you were doing. You were a pinup model. They're basically a model on Instagram or TikTok. You know, maybe, you know, they might occasionally talk about fashion or where they're traveling to, but the bottom line is they are selling their looks and whatnot. How do you view this world and compare it to the world that you grew up in?
Well, as a feminist, like the whole point is that every woman gets to choose what they want to do, and we should celebrate what every woman wants to do. I will say that when I was growing up and doing pinup stuff, I said, "Oh, this is empowering." We grew up in a time where there's this book I quote called "Feminist Chauvinist Pigs" by Ariel Levy, Levi.
Yeah.
But she says that we grew up in like the 2000s raunch culture where like Playboy was presented as wholesome. They had a TV show where it was all cute and playful.
Yep.
And like all the men's magazines, like we were taught sexiness is empowering. And it's not in that form. You know what I mean? You're still like just objectifying yourself and calling it female empowerment. So the hard thing to parse is when you're 21 years old, it feels powerful, but
Yep.
are you at an age where you're reflecting on what it all really means? Like probably
Mhm.
not. And a good example also is Emrata, Emily Ratajkowski. She wrote this book that I really love called My Body. And she talks about when she did that naked video for what's his name that blew her into fame. And she said it was really empowering at the time. And now she looks back and thinks, you know, actually, like they were really creepy on set.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like, I think in the past, I think as an actor, like of course I've had conversations about like what are your thoughts about nudity and all that stuff, and I've often have come across like it's just a really like I'm in my 40s now, but we all kind of talk about, oh, that's actually a really nice snapshot, especially if you're working on a project and there's hair, makeup, lighting, everything, that it's a nice
best
snapshot.
ever.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a nice snapshot of yourself to look back on. So that's more of a personal thing versus thinking about what you end up putting out, because a lot of it as creators, we don't have a whole lot of control once it's put out there. So kind of letting that go and being like, okay, you know, in the conversations I've had amongst artists and nudity was like, I think it's just a good archival moment, you know, and it's like, I think it's like, hopefully, you know, for the gals who are in their like younger 20s and stuff, you know, but I think what's interesting, I did meet a sex worker, and except she has like a master, she has her MBA, so she came from a marketing background, switched, and then she started doing OnlyFans on the side and switched over. But in her case, I'm like, damn girl, like she already has her MBA. So I'm like, oh, you're just taking her money and running. Because I'm like, So I think that's, so everyone, if you're 21,
and who's to
go out
judge,
and get
right?
your MBA and hop back in.
And who's to judge? And I think that's what I'm taking away from these comments, right? Is that you're not judging how people want to express their sexuality, and I think that's a positive thing. So Kaila, for all, like for the 20-year-olds that read your book and are concerned about, hey, am I doing something the way you've reflected that is propagating a stereotype or the Asian fetish, like what's the advice you would give them?
Flip it around and say I kind of want men to read the book, because we have a culture in which we're like policing women and what they do and what they wear, and like when they get raped it's like, oh well, what were you doing, like why are you there? Like there's a quote somewhere where it's like, why don't we stop teaching women, I forgot what the exact quote was, but the lesson is, let's teach men not to rape. It's basically
Let's not teach our women how to dress. But
they should be able to do whatever they want and not be guilty of whatever.
That's fair. How about just not rape people? Yeah, that's pretty good. that seems logical.
That's a good place to start.
Coming back to the book, so it was amazing when I was reading this chapter. I went through the exact same journey as you, and I can't wait to pull Junko into this conversation because she's Japanese. Memoirs of a Geisha. So 100% remember that movie coming out, the book coming out first, reading it, thinking this is an incredible book, so well written, right? And it was probably from the similar perspective of, you just didn't, as an Asian person, you didn't have many of your own stories to read, so it already was elevated in my mind,
grateful,
right? And oh great, I get to see Gong Li and Zhang Ziyi, this Ken Watanabe, this is fantastic. And then, certainly, and I don't think I've ever really watched that movie a second time, so this is now going back so many years, and certainly like in my brain somewhere, I was like, yeah, that movie probably wasn't appropriate now that I think about it.
I mean, so much from the 2000s wasn't. So
but boy, unpacking that chapter with your writing was so much fun. Now, Junko knows I was just in Japan a couple weeks ago, and I have to say, like, you talked about the Korean culture, and Japan is, to me, as much as that book and that story written by a white man, and so therefore, like, shame on whatever, but if it had been written by a Japanese man, there are elements of those stories in Memoirs of a Geisha that historically are true, and there's still a lot in current Japanese society that seems to fetishize women. I mean, my son can't walk into any toy store in Japan and not like freak out. Like, why are all these toys of these girls wearing
so sexy
schoolgirl outfits, pulled up, with giant boobies and all that. So he's like so confused, and he's like, he thinks he's like in a porn store and like can't, like he's going to be in trouble. What is your view? Junko and I've had this conversation briefly, but like, what is your view on that, and how much Asian cultures themselves are actually still creating this Asian, the kind of concept of Asian fetish and creating the desire for that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in the book, in the Joy Luck Club chapter. Like, the submissive Asian woman comes from Asia, because that is a thing. Women were very oppressed, maybe much more. Like, did any other culture bind women's feet? And like, can you think of a more horrible thing that was done to women and convince them to think that this is beautiful? Like, that is mind-blowing to me, actually, when I think of that now. And in Japan, I think the legal age of consent was only just increased from 13 to 16 within like the last couple of years or something, or like the last 10 years.
2-3 years.
Yeah. There's a JK business, which is like I think, normalized thing where men date like a sugar daddy kind of thing, but with like schoolgirls, but it's like pretty normalized. I'm not sure. It sounds like, it's common-ish. I don't know, because I don't live there or whatever, but
Right. I think there's arrangements. I don't know. I think Japan's always been just a country of arrangements.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in a one layer, yeah, I think when it comes to that world, majority of the time, the greater majority is gonna say we don't want to know, so go do it elsewhere. So it is definitely would end up being like an underground private thing, and I'm like, yeah, like those specific, like what you just brought up. I mean, I guess people find each other on the internet these days, I
No, I
guess.
think there's cafes where you could just go to do this. Like it's not as hidden as it is here.
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, yeah. You know what? That's always been true because, come to think of it,
Yeah.
because your usual hostess clubs and or host clubs, um, they will always on the outside say like, of course we don't have any prostitution, but everything
Yeah.
else becomes case by case.
Yeah. Junko,
And so, yeah.
I don't want to attack your culture,
I
but
know, sorry.
when I was in
Whatever,
It's
it's fine.
generally
Yeah.
Asian
When I was
culture.
in
It's always kind of
Shinjuku,
weird. So
yeah, I walked down a street where all these young girls in, maid costumes, whatever, just lined the street holding little signs saying,
honey, you have no
at my
idea.
time.
You have no
It,
idea how many I've looped. Looping is when you're filling in all the voices and stuff on TV, and I have done Shinjuku and Harajuku so many times for like
mm,
various TV shows. So yes,
yeah.
like I
Anyway,
have filled those voices in.
this is all my way of apologizing to my family that yes, white fetish, Asian fetish, but Asian men actually have done a lot of damage
They
here
started
too,
it.
right? Exactly.
Like I think Asian American men are perhaps not perpetuating it, but like men
Mm.
in Asia are still
Mm.
doing things. Like,
Yeah.
look,
The patriarchy.
I'm grateful I live here. I say it
Mhm.
in my book. I'm so glad I did not grow up in East Asia because it's hard to be a woman there.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was there an essay or chapter of this book that was most cathartic for you when you wrote it?
Just so much of it was. I think for me, my bandmate, her name is Kat, who's like a really, really good friend to mine, and just kind of reliving like she was such a light and magic. And then we kind of suffered, like a lot of the girls in the band portion of my life had drug abuse problems, and she just ultimately got taken by some of the forces involved with Asian fetishism, and also like
Mm.
the drug use that if
Mm.
it was cathartic in a way because I've been 11 years sober. So, like, if I didn't get sober, that could have very much been me.
Mhm. Yep. Well, we are glad you're with us.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are. All right. So tell us what's next in terms of the release of the book. I've seen actually you've had some amazing a set of events lined up for you in terms of moderators like Jenny Yang's a friend of Junko's, but Margaret
yeah.
Cho.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna be talking to Jenny coming up. Yeah, I saw
Yes.
that.
I'm talking to Jenny in Long Beach at Bel Canto Books. And I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but
Sometime this month.
yeah, it's the week after the book's release. So I think it's the 23rd. It's a Tuesday. And then on the 19th, which is book publication day, I'm at Barnes and Noble's at the Grove with Margaret
Nice.
Cho, who is
Nice.
mentioned in my book because she has spoken out on Asian fetishism many a times.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
It's fantastic. And how did those come together? Are these individuals you knew beforehand,
I
or
haven't
they?
met them. I think
Oh,
my
exciting.
publisher actually just reached out.
Mm.
Yeah. And they're both writers. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I
You'll
met
have fun with
Margaret
Jenny.
Cho for the
Yeah.
first time on Sunday at the Belly Laughs Festival, and she is
Yeah.
lovely and a true icon. So
Yes,
you've
an
got some
icon
good
for
support
sure.
for your book, and it shows how much the topic resonates with, I'm sure, all Asian women. But to your point, you want men to read it, and it resonates with me, and the topic's really. So I will get my white friends and Asian friends
You'll
and family
you'll
to
buy
read
it
it.
as a present for your
Yes.
brothers-in-law.
Oh my God.
They'll be like,
Stocking
"Why are you giving me
stuffer.
this?"
In
They'll
fact,
be all-
that isn't just
follow-up
a
to
joke.
Thanksgiving.
This is going to happen. I'm going to get my book signed by you, and it's going to be in their stocking for
Oh.
Christmas. 100%.
Oh, that's a
100%.
they're
good
all gonna be
one.
like, "Why did only the white guys get this?"
Yeah. Well, we are united by rice. One of the questions that we like to kind of end the podcast with is, do you have a favorite rice dish? I like to try to set it up as, you've had a long day, a stressful day. You just want your comfort food.
That's so easy. Yeah.
Rice base, noodle dish, whatever. What is your go-to?
My Chinese is so terrible, but 卤肉饭. Wait,
Noodle
are you
fan.
Chinese?
I'm
Ben is.
the worst kind. I don't
Oh,
speak.
okay.
Okay,
You know,
so this is
a little. I
Taiwanese
speak a
food.
little bit of Cantonese, but that, yeah.
So there's like not really an English name for it, or maybe there is a braised pork rice. So it's like
Okay.
fatty
Oh,
pork, and it's like
yes.
chopped up fine and then like made into almost a gravy like thing and put on top of rice. And that is the ultimate like Taiwanese quintessential comfort dish.
And do you do that? Do you make that for yourself at home now, or is there a restaurant that is also like your go-to spot for that?
I do still make it at home. My favorite Taiwanese restaurant, I think it's called Lou's Garden. And I'm pretty sure they have that specific dish, but they have all kinds of other Taiwanese dishes too. But noodle fan, you
Nice.
could find that at any Taiwanese restaurant. Another one good is Singbala, which is
Mhm.
in Arcadia, I believe. Yeah.
Great. So
Excellent.
great. Well, Kaila, it's been wonderful talking to you. So Fetishized comes out August 19th. Also, your social media. I mean, I will tell everybody, as I mentioned, you hit the sweet spot with 2000s. What do you call it? The
If you
Asian
want some
raunchy
2000s
era.
content, yeah.
Ooh,
It
yeah.
is.
Some
It
good
is a lot of
times.
fun. So everybody go out and get that book and follow Kaila. It was wonderful to talk to you. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks for
you.
having me.